here we go. So this actually is serious despite my fabulous hairdo, courtesy of Subi. We are doing our writing lesson today at lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in our informational books. So today's lesson is about graphic support. I think you guys are going to like this one. A lot of you have already added a lot of graphic support to your book, but the truth is that children's books today, a lot of our informational books are full of pictures and captions and charts, graphs, maps, and things that somebody needs to mute their microphone. Things that really make the books interesting, which is so I'm going to mute a couple of microphones here just because we've got a bunch unmuted. Okay, great. So today's lesson is on how do I add graphic support and what graphic support do I need to add? So I want you guys to grab a piece of paper and a pencil so you can write this down. Grab a piece of paper and a pencil right now. Everybody run and grab one. Okay? At the top of your paper, as soon as you get it, you're going to write graphic support. G-R-A-P-H, that PH makes that F sound, graphic support. And the reason it's support is it really supports your understanding of whatever topic you're learning about. Graphic support. Let me put my video on Spotlight. Spotlight for everybody. So graphic support. Please write that on a piece of paper because what I'm going to tell you right now is what I expect to see in your book. A minimum. You can always add more, but I want to make sure everybody has at least some graphic support. So I'm watching to make sure everybody's come back and that everybody's writing this down. Everybody's writing down graphic support because that's what our topic is for today. How do I add graphic support so that my reader can learn not only from the words in my book, but from the pictures and charts and graphs and timelines? Okay, this is another thing we add to our book. And also students, as we move on from one thing to the next, my expectation is that you at home are finishing those other things. So if you have not finished your mini stories yet, you need to make time today to make sure you finish that mini story. And then today's all about adding that graphic support. We're going to have just a little bit of time left for writing on these books next week, but mostly we're going to work on editing and revising and proofreading and all that kind of stuff, making your books perfect. All right, so graphic support. The first thing I want every single person to have on their graphic support is I would like every single person to have a cover. It could be a photo, a picture, a diagram, but an attractive cover, because the truth is you guys wouldn't even pick up and read a book if it didn't have like a cool cover photo. So you need to have some sort of interesting cover. Your cover should not just be a word. It should have some sort of picture on it. So you need to have a cover to your book. It's before your table of contents. It should be the very first thing I see. And your cover should also have your name on it. I've seen some books that do not have names on them. Griffin, I think yours doesn't have your name on it yet. Make sure you add your name to that cover photo.
Miss Lodge, can your cover be a video or it just has to be a picture?
You know what? I'm okay with a video if it's super, super short, because you know what? We're in the new digital age, aren't we? But you must have something on there. The next thing, if you're doing a history book, well, let's just do a book about, let's do a history book. If you're doing a history book, so like this Revolutionary War book, one of the most important things to have in a history book is a timeline to set things in context. This one has a timeline. It's in the table of contents. There's timeline. So if your book is about the women's baseball team or Martin Luther King or the Oregon Trail, those are history books. All right. Even Mongolia, I think, is kind of a history topic. And you're going to need to have a timeline. This timeline is on page 58. It's a really cool timeline. So in this book, whenever I get confused about time, I can go to this page. You can see they have the years, and underneath the years, they have events. They even have pictures on this timeline, which is kind of cool. But it really tells me what's going on. It also says timeline on the top of the page, gigantic, in case I missed it. If you are doing any sort of history book, Lewis and Clark, Louisiana Purchase, you need to have a timeline. If your book is not about history, like if your book is about weather or Saturn, you don't need a timeline. Although you might have one, you could have a timeline of like exploration of Saturn could be in there. But anyway, that's a timeline. If you're doing like a links, you're not going to have a timeline. So if you have one of those other types of topics, like the lynx or microscopic animals or ocean creatures, any of those kind of things, instead of a timeline, you're going to want to have a picture of whatever it is you're talking about. So a picture with labels showing the parts of. So like if your topic is on computers, if your topic is on computers, you might have a picture of a computer with some labels with arrows pointing to things. If your topic is on animals, you're going to want to show the animal's body and maybe have arrows pointing to different parts of the animal to point out and describe adaptations. I'm trying to think what other topics we have out there. Maybe you have a history topic like Elia, but you're going to have a picture of a covered wagon with all the parts, right? Pointing that out.
Cheese.
Ryan, yours is not really history and it's not really a thing, but in safety, there could be a variety of diagrams showing people like what position to get into, where to go, right? Nice. Palm trees. Clara, you're going to want to show a palm tree and maybe point out all the different parts of the palm tree so people will know what you're talking about. Or maybe make a map of the world and show where different palm trees grow. That might be interesting. Or have a comparison graph with different types of palm trees with the labels as to what they are. You can do these by hand, or you can do them by taking things off the internet, or if you're making a paper book, you can actually print out and cut and paste things into it. Here's a picture of a computer. It's really complex with a whole bunch of captions on the side describing what things are. Make sure that whatever pictures you put into your book have got captions next to them. So here's another one. This one's about weather. I thought this was a pretty cool diagram here. Alma, I've got my background blocking it, but it's got, this part is green, so you can't see it, but it says life under pressure, and it shows all the layers of the atmosphere where weather happens, the troposphere, the stratosphere. So it's a diagram and it has labels talking about them and describing them. Thought that was pretty cool. This one, if you're one of the kids doing an animal, I thought this was cool. This is our defenses book. And in addition to having pictures of like the whole animal with descriptions of the animal, it's also got parts that show just like this is a frog's claw blown up huge. And instead of just putting the picture in, they also put a description here in a cool little bubble. And the description says, a view inside the toe of a hairy frog reveals the curved bone that breaks free from the small bony nodule and drops down to form the claw. And then I think this is cool. On the next page, they have termites, and they're talking about the termite self-defense. And again, they have a little arrow showing the part of the termite that this termite actually has this really cool thing it does where it releases deadly poison. So it actually shows the part of the body that contains the deadly poison. It's got an arrow and then it talks about it. Under attack by 2 termite enemies, a blue spotted termite deploys her chemical weapon, releasing a deadly drop of toxin. So having labels with arrows pointing them out is essential. Here's what I'm going to tell you the next thing that goes on this list is. If you put any picture, any timeline, anything in, you must somehow add some words explaining why you put it in there or what it is teaching. So you must have, I'm calling it captions, in your words. So even if you put a big chart in there that has somebody else's words, you need to explain why you put it in there. I put this chart in to show blah, blah, blah. I thought this chart teaches blah, blah, blah. This chart shows blah, blah, blah. Do not write blah, blah, blah. Okay. If you're doing something like global warming, you could have a timeline showing how things have changed over time, Raina, or you could have also some sort of a data chart showing like how much the global warming, how much the temperature has gone up in some sort of chart or graph. Elizabeth, go ahead. What's your question?
What about the table of contents?
What about the table of contents? I don't understand what your question is.
Every book's supposed to have it.
Yes. Everybody has to have that. Oh, you mean put it on the list? Well, you guys already know you have to have that. Now I'm kind of talking about pictures, Elizabeth. So even though that is part of the support, let's see here. So we have a cover picture, history topics have a timeline, animal or objects or subjects have a large photo with captions. The fourth thing that needs to be, so everybody has a cover picture, everybody has a timeline or a picture with captions with a description, or both. The last thing that everybody must have in their book is something called a primary source. I'm going to write that down now. Primary source. We talk about primary sources mostly when we're talking about history. Does anybody know what a primary source is versus like a secondary source? Anybody? I don't see any hands raised.
I know.
Okay, go for it, Alex.
A primary source is like sort of evidence, like here's fossils. They're a primary source, or a diary of somebody.
Yes. So a primary source is an original piece of information. So whenever anybody's writing about anything, they do research. And you guys are doing your research out of books. Books are not primary sources, they're secondary sources. They're places where somebody else has done the research based on the real things, and then they've come back and interpreted it for you. The problem with that is sometimes people will interpret things, especially history, in a way that you don't agree with, that you don't think is true. But maybe also even, well, for example, nutrition is a good topic. For a long time, they told us that it was really great for all of us to drink tons and tons of milk. Like when I grew up, milk, everybody thought everybody should drink tons of milk. I used to chug it out of the thing. How many of your parents tell you to drink tons and tons of milk? Not so many, because that really has changed over time. They've done more nutritional data, and now people don't necessarily think that humans were designed to drink tons and tons of cow milk all their lives, right? So some people still drink milk, but there's a lot of us who don't drink any milk, and we get our calcium in a different way. That is a fact that changed over time. If you just listen to what people say forever, then information doesn't change. But the truth is, information does change. You smart people are going to grow up and reinterpret things. And one of the things that we're really looking at now is history and the way it's interpreted. And so, and this is kind of an interesting book because it's about the Revolutionary War when we broke free from Britain. But there are some people in the United States right now who think that they would like to break free from the United States for various reasons. Like the Proud Boys and stuff are saying, oh, we should make our own country where we can make our own rules. So studying history really helps us understand today, but also sometimes we read something in history and you're like, I don't agree with that. So I was telling you the other day that there are primary sources. This book is full of them. Paintings that were done at the time and people interpreted them. But what they've learned about, so like here is a picture of the Boston Massacre, which I've been telling you guys a little bit about. Okay, this is a really famous picture made at the time. Does this picture, do you think it's on the side of the colonists, the Americans, or the British soldiers? Who looks bad in this picture?
Colonists.
What do you think?
The British soldiers.
Yeah, the British soldiers look pretty bad in that picture. It looks like they're just wiping the people out. All the colonists are falling down and they're covered in blood, and the soldiers have these mean faces. Well, this is a famous piece of work done by Paul Revere, who was a famous guy at that time. And they thought, you know, this bad thing happened in Boston, but we can use this to change people's minds and make them revolt. So they needed people at that time. People didn't want to leave England. They felt like England was their country. And so to get them to change their minds, they made it look really bad. How many of you have seen pictures this year of Portland with protesters and things going on downtown? Yeah. So I talked to my friend on the East Coast and he said, "Are you okay? Isn't it dangerous in Portland?" And I said, "Not really. We're fine. We're just living our lives." That people on the East Coast right now think we're living in a war zone because of the way they've shown it in the media. It's up to you guys. You're faced with so much information. It's up to you sometimes to look at the real evidence, the primary source documents, the pictures of the time, the photographs, the things you've seen this year about Oregon history. You know, I grew up thinking that Oregon was a place that was really great for Black people. I thought that we didn't have racism in Oregon because that was what I was taught. I didn't see those pictures you guys saw this year of like the Ku Klux Klan marching down the main street. And I didn't see all those facts and statistics about how they passed laws to keep Black people out of Oregon. And so I made the wrong conclusion because I didn't look at the primary source documents. This year, you watched the original videos and saw the photographs, and you probably have a better, more true vision of history than I do. So in your book, I want you to include a primary source document. That could be a photo of the actual animal that you're studying, or it could be something written from the time period that you're studying, or a piece of art from that time period, but something old, a picture that you've seen in your research that you want to include as a primary source document. It can be a little hard to come up with one, but like for Nora, she's doing Martin Luther King. She might include the actual words of one of his speeches, right? Gerard's doing a peacock. He's probably going to want to include a real photo of a peacock, maybe in the wild, showing their habitat. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions about how to do that primary source document? Okay. So that's really it for today, is that we're going to add those things. So every single one of you needs to have a cover photo. If you're a history topic, you need to have a timeline that you've added in. You can research and find one online, but make sure you explain it. You need to have captions explaining all of your pictures that you've put in and why you put them in your book. And you need to have a primary source document, something real, not something from a book, although it could be a copy of a picture from a book, something from that time period. Okay? And that's kind of it.